It's also funny because at this point, I knew who the Foo Fighters were before Nirvana. So for a couple of years, I had to rewire my brain to not see Nirvana as Dave Grohl's other band. What's up, maraschino cherries, and welcome to another episode of Guarsenio's High School CD Booklet Review. The show where I, Guarsenio Hall, review all the albums I bought in high school and before. I say and before because today we are talking about the first album I ever bought with my own money, the self-titled Foo Fighters album. It's got my name on it. So yeah, here we are. This is the first CD I ever bought. This is the oldest album I own. The story behind me buying this album is really funny because I didn't even know who the Foo Fighters were. This was a purchase of happenstance. When I was 10 years old, the year was 1999, and the biggest bands for a stinky little boy like me were Limp Bizkit, Blink-182, Eminem, and I was allowed to listen to none of them. At this time, my parents were very concerned about me listening to albums with parental advisory stickers. It got him. You got him, Tipper. I remember weekly I would make like a PowerPoint style presentation to my parents about why they should let my friends burn me copies of these CDs. So in conclusion, I think you should let Evan burn me a copy of this CD because even though Fred Durst says coming in raw with no corrections, saving all perfections for what I do with my erections, I won't say that because I know I'm not supposed to. Thank you. So I ended up having to listen to most cool music while carpooling to school, and I ended up just going to Tower Records and randomly buying the Foo Fighters because I thought their name was funny. That's it. That's the whole story. It's also funny because at this point, I knew who the Foo Fighters were before Nirvana. I definitely had heard Smells Like Teen Spirit, but I didn't recognize it yet as Nirvana. So for a couple of years, I had to rewire my brain to not see Nirvana as Dave Grohl's other band. I also think it's really funny that my mom had me write my name on the actual CD. Like, who steals an uncased CD? The album itself, I don't have a lot to specifically say about it. I think it's charming. I think it's great still. When I found out that this album was all recorded by one guy, I thought that was extra cool and it was inspiring. Songs like Ecstatic with their weird chord progressions had a lot of influence on my guitar playing and songwriting. I also think Weenie Beanie was a perfect setup for me to enjoy screamy music and hardcore and drop-tuned riffs. Anyway, let's talk about this album art. This album art looks like Marvin the Martian's Suicide Note. Oh God, can I say that? Let's just skip this part. I'm sorry, Dave. Actually, I'm just gonna say it. This is a weird choice of art for a dude whose bandmate died extremely publicly from gun violence 6 months prior to the release of this album. I know Kurt Cobain didn't use a Mentok the Mind Taker shrink ray gun, but it still feels like kind of a naive choice. I think mostly it shows that Dave was really young and he didn't really know how successful any of his projects were gonna be. He was just a talented dude making music on his own and decided to release his songs and see what happens. I think the biggest factor here is just that 6 months is not enough time to process a loss that huge. If Dave had any inkling of his future success, I'm sure he would have chosen more appropriate art. Like a screenshot from the hit animated show Street Sharks. Man, that show was cool. Nostalgia! So to sum up, I love this album. Of course I love this album. It's the first album I ever bought. I also love the Foo Fighters and I love Dave Grohl. I know it's corny to say you love Dave Grohl and it's like easy to make fun of him like I just did in the album roast, but the dude works so hard to try to make the music industry a friendlier place, and he is constantly lifting up newer artists and trying to expose people to different types of music. We love you, Dave. But yeah, that does it for this week's episode. So you can let me know what you thought of the album in the comments, but I don't want to see any of those sexist Courtney Love conspiracy theories. You take that shit to therapy. Next week, we're talking Shadows Fall and why Brian is the only white guy who's allowed to have dreadlocks. I actually don't know if that's true. I just think they look cool on him.
It's 2 minutes to late night!